Happy good morning to everybody out there, and welcome to the 18th of January 2023. I'm Lars and will be your host for today. We're just waiting for a few more attendees to join us this morning and talking about 2023, the year to be, and what it will be about. We have some fantastic panelists and insights, and I'm really looking forward to learn a lot. We have Lina with us this morning from Mutant. We have Amanda from Prospect Resourcing. We have Ogilvy on the line, and really, really cool topics. I'm sure that's the reason why you tuned in this morning. Just a reminder, and I'll do that also a few times this morning, use the Q&A section of the webinar, not the chat, but the Q&A section. So after each and every single segment, we'll have a few minutes to answer your questions on the respective topics. So don't wait until the end of the webinar. We should be ending at about 10:45 to 11, depending how many questions you have and how intense our discussions here go. But please, early on, right at the bottom of your screens, use the Q&A section to file your questions for the respective spokespeople. We'll kick it off very, very soon with Richard Brett from Ogilvy Health and Ogilvy PR, talking about extreme fandom, and then right afterwards, followed by Amanda Lee from Prospect about the changing power dynamics in the war for talent. And everybody who is in a hiring position or has been in the last year knows exactly what she's talking about, right? And then afterwards, we'll have Jennie Johnson, the head of marketing for GrabAds, and talking about the rise of Superapp advertising in Southeast Asia and the why. So we have really, really different topics, but I think they really show on how big 2023 is going to be. And one of my favorite topics I'm looking forward to is what Lina from Mutant will talk about, ChatGPT versus Communicators. And I'm sure everybody in this industry has read articles in all the publications of our industry in the last few days. We had discussions internally at Precious about some of the drafts are better than some of our juniors. The need for us to really think always about how we can or have to up the value we provide and not just the commodities that are out there. Unfortunately, and you might have heard when I just repeated the speakers, one of the original speakers unfortunately had to drop out about the topic of the role of media in South Korea. But I believe, nevertheless, we have a stunning panel of experts talking about 2023, the year of. Before we kick off, also a big shout out, of course, to Tara and Rebecca from PRCA for enabling us to have this wonderful platform to discuss here and listen today. Thank you very much. Also a reminder, the PRCA Awards deadline is this coming Friday. Please, well, in my own interest as a head of a PR agency, please don't submit, we have better chances. But in the industry interest, please put all your great work forward and let the best ones win. I think awards are really less about just, beating our own chest, but really looking out there on who's pushing the envelope, who has the greatest ideas, who came up with something new, and who just had successful campaigns. So please put your best foot forward for the awards. Deadline for the PRCA Asia Pacific Awards is this coming Friday. Again, for those that are just tuned in, use the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. And if you see others having a question that you think that's exactly what I want to do, you can upvote questions. So for the beauty of webinar with using Zoom, you can upvote others' questions. You don't even have to ask yourself. I think that's all quite straightforward. The presenters each will have about 10 minutes to talk about the topic, and then we'll have 5+ minutes for your questions. And that's really about what you want to get out of it. Yeah. We are right on time. I'm trying to run this by the Swiss-German concept of time. In Asia, not always easy, but I will try to attempt that. So without further ado, I want to introduce Richard Brett, the CEO of Ogilvy Health and Ogilvy PR. And I won't list all his accolades. There are way too many to even fit into the 2 hours we have today. But he has over 20 years, 2 decades of experience in marketing, communications, brand, and agency leadership. And he also leads the Ogilvy network in ANZ, which was just formed 2 years ago, and brings together Ogilvy's 5 business units across 6 cities and 3 countries. So, Richard, you're ready to rock and roll. Good morning.
Good morning. How are we all?
Good. Fantastic. So, the stage is yours, I would say. I'm really looking forward to learn more about Extreme Fandom. Please.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Lars. So, yes, I'm going to talk this morning about something, a trend that we've noticed and we think is really important, which is extreme fandom. And this is something that we think is really, really interesting and a big shift in marketing communications. If we think about how marketing communications has really been functioning for the last 150 years or so, it has really been about pumping out and pushing messages towards audiences. And whilst that approach isn't going away, we now think that there is another approach, which is really about co-creation and a conversation and partnering with consumers, fans, other authors and other creators to develop content with them that adds to your organization's story. And it's of course fueled by new technology, new platforms, social media, and new types of media. And extreme fandom, you know, we want to talk about this today because it's a really good example of this broader trend of co-creation. Doesn't have to be with people that we are calling extreme fans, but we think in finding these passionate people that are very emotionally connected to your organization, and no matter what organization you're in, there will be very passionate fans. You can create some really, really interesting content. So you're probably wondering why there's a picture of Sherlock Holmes up here. And I think the point here is that extreme fandom is not new. In 1893, Sherlock Holmes was essentially killed off, and there was huge public outpouring of grief and protests at this. And this actually then led to the first ever fan fiction about 4 years later. On the right is a picture of Francis Bourgeot, and he is, some of you may follow him, he's basically a train spotter, but he has basically reinvented what was previously labeled a very uncool pastime to something that is now seen as very cool. So he, those of you that don't know who he is, he's kind of this crazy, wacky train spotter, and he films and creates content all about trains and his interactions with trains and trains that he's spotted. He's got about 2.6 million followers on TikTok, and is now front and center of a new Gucci campaign as well. So you can kind of see how fashion brands are taking to this kind of slightly ironic trend of kind of slightly wacky, passionate creators. But really it's about how social media has changed the dynamic, taken passionate obsession to new highs, and is creating new types of content. And this is a piece that came out in the New York Times about 6 months ago, and it's by Sherry Turkle, and she basically shared her views on why fandom is such a big phenomenon now. And she gave a really good example and talked a lot about the Amber Heard case, and she compared it to the 1960s and the Beatles. And she basically said that, you know, in the 1960s, there was obviously extreme fandom around the Beatles, but there was a sense of distance and reverence. And that distance and reverence has gone. People feel much more proprietary around the celebrities and interests that they're passionate about. They feel that they can create content and news and opinions and share those opinions. The filters and the boundaries have gone. So another example of extreme fandom coming into place is with the movie Despicable Me, and the latest film Minions: Rise of Gru hit the cinemas recently, and TikTok kind of went wild with armies of young men and boys getting suited and booted before heading to the local theatre. And it's kind of a really interesting example of how social media allows people to connect around something they're passionate about and then come together in real life to create content and bond and have fun around something. So what does this trend mean for us in marketing communications? Well, I wanted to share a few examples. So this is a campaign from us here at Ogilvy in ANZ region. It's for our client Xbox. And this, as you can see, is a breakfast cereal that was created for the launch of the new Age of Empire franchise. So I don't know how many of you are video game passionate video gamers, but some of you will know that there's a rallying cry in the strategy game called Wololos, which is basically when people come together as they go into battle. And the original game was launched as a CD-ROM as a promotion on the back of cereal packets. So we actually created a new cereal to tap into that idea, and this kind of that piece of information about the CD-ROM, you'd only know it if you were a passionate fan. But this campaign actually reached about 60 million people around the world. The next example for this from Skittles, and I've got a video, I won't play all the video in interest of time, but it's another really good example. And Skittles basically removed, they changed the flavor of their green from lime to green apple a few years ago. They received tens of thousands of complaints from passionate fans. And this campaign that they did recently was about the switch back to lime, and they basically apologized to all those passionate fans who had complained. So let's watch a little bit of the video.
In 2013, Skittles upset a lot of people by taking away lime. Skittles will now apologize to everyone who ever complained.
We started by apologizing with a 35-minute live press conference on Twitch.
At Cats and Chins writes, I want lime Skittles. Green apple is garbage. We're sorry. At Matthew Calloway writes, green Skittles are the physical manifestation of sadness. We are sorry.
A record 136,000 people tuned in to watch us highlight and apologize to all that negativity.
At me99999 writes, such trash. They taste of green apple and betrayal. Skittles suck now. The reason I have trust issues. I may as well have bought a vomit bag. Hashtag vom. At Piss Clams. We are sorry. Skittles is sorry. 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 Our bad.
Then we kept on apologizing on Twitter, in Times Square, and with a post apologizing to every single person we'd wronged. That took 10 hours and 54 minutes to read. And not just an empty apology, we sent everyone free Skittles.
So yeah, you kind of get the idea, but a really fun, really engaging campaign that talked directly to those passionate fans. Another example that some of you may have seen is from Heinz, and they basically very simply asked the internet to draw ketchup. And obviously, everyone drew a classic Heinz ketchup bottle, apart from one person who drew a mustard bottle for some reason. But they then used these drawings in out of home and above the line campaign. And then they asked AI to then draw ketchup as well. And let's take a look at what happened. And so my final example is one from us here at Ogilvy in Australia. And again, I'll play the video, which tells the story of the campaign, but it's really about how to tap into passionate fans to allow them to give them an opportunity to express their fandom in a new way, and then enhance this organization, KFC's food credentials at the same time.
20,000 finger-licking fans registered for the restaurant waitlist. We're hearing it's pretty fancy. What's the process? Where do you start?
Over the past year, you know, we've been in and out of the test kitchen at KFC, and we were working on this menu. It was also building a restaurant from scratch. We also had to build a kitchen and bring equipment in to make that. And when all these pieces came together, it's created an amazing experience for our guests.
Guys, get this. KFC Australia is launching an 11-course fine dining menu with the wine pairing. Yeah. Most fine dining meals don't come with the spork. You know that? That's true.
You just have to lick the plates.
Lick the plate?
It's an 11-course degustation. The catch, you have to travel to Australia, down under.
The world's first fine dining KFC.
I want it every night of my life.
One of the best fried chickens you ever get.
Chicken drumstick, but dusted with gold.
That basically
Gold nuggets.
Fuck
you, food snobs.
What a silly, hilarious thing for grown-ups to do. I love it.
It was really fucking good.
So to wrap the trend up, you know, it's really about finding those passionate fans and putting them at the heart of the story, allowing them to kind of co-create with you and feature in the story and the content and the idea that you're creating, embrace their passion, and then reward them, give them something back, give them an experience, or delight them with something that you saw from those examples. So that is my trend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels like having some fried chicken for lunch later. So we have a couple of questions in the chat or in the Q&A section already. So I'll drive right into it. Do you have any examples of extreme fandom that is not stunt-like? So also big marketing budget driven, but more PR led. How does this apply to health communications, for example? So I think there are two questions at least in one. One, do you have an example that is not driven by stunt-like driven, but more PR-led? Second, an health example.
I'm not sure I quite understand the first part of that question, because I guess I would say that all these examples are PR led, they're all earned led, but in terms of the health communications example, I think you know, we've got a big healthcare practice here in Australia. We certainly work a lot with patients. They're obviously not fans, but in terms of putting patients at the heart of a campaign, in terms of advocacy and driving change around government policy, I think that it definitely applies to healthcare.
Okay, fantastic. Next question is, how can a brand recover from the negative outcomes of extreme or toxic fandom? So when it organically turns the other way. I
can't think of an example of toxic fandom, but I mean, there's certainly examples, I think, recently where, you know, we've seen, maybe Adidas is a good example recently, even today, in terms of what happened in Berlin. But all brands, all organizations now are at the risk of a social media driven reputation challenge. And I think, the best way to approach this is to act very quickly and to act honestly and transparently and humbly when things go wrong.
A follow-up question, and I think Anita Neville has something in that area as well. Does Extreme Fandom work in B2B context or really only in B2C? I think you answered it slightly when you talked about health communications.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does work in B2B. B2B communications is changing. It's becoming more emotive. It's becoming more personal. There's some great examples actually from Patreon. And the founder has created some really interesting content about his story. So, I think the idea of finding people that are passionate about your organization, your product, works, whether it's B2B or B2C. It's always going to be slightly different. But you certainly, I think, in B2B, technology probably being a really good example where there are some deep fans about certain technological products that you can tap into. And
I remember a thing that's already like a decade or longer ago when social media for B2B and corporate brands was still a relatively new. You had General Electric and their train division started a Twitter account. Everybody, what do you do? And you had fans about big, huge locomotives in the US just going nuts about those big machines. Or I think Maersk shipping is a great example where people just posted photos of the Maersk ships around under the Golden Gate and something like that. It's so there are examples, but of course, big shiny objects are easier to associate with than a SaaS platform, I guess. We have two more questions. I guess time for two more questions. One anonymous attendee asked, I would love to have Richard's take on finding fans for either boring or unknown brands. Do you have any examples where campaigns have had limited ATL investment, but strong talkability and earned results?
Well, I mean, I would say probably that the examples that I've shared today they're not above the line. I mean, the Heinz one, yes, was integrated. Didn't have to have that above the line component to make it work. So I think my answer is, whatever you do, you may think your product is boring. There will be passionate fans out there on the internet that you can find and create interesting content for.
I think, and that's recurring in a lot of questions that I'm screening through. It's like, maybe it's a different understanding of what PR or ATL means, right? So I see a trend of saying, hey, can we do something without having massive activation budgets? Maybe that puts it a little bit more into context. So can we create a fandom movement earned PR, media relations led, without huge budgets to have these activations, because not everybody can build a restaurant or engage chefs or these kind of things. You have a small budget example.
Low budget, yeah. Well, I mean, the Age of Empires campaign was a really small budget. We created a small number of packaging basically for cereal. That was it. So it's a really low budget campaign. To take it one step further, we do a lot of work for Ford here, and a lot of the work is simply partnering with real people that are passionate about their Ford product and creating content with them. So it's really about just co-creation and creating content that they will post and that we can post the Ford channel. So it's really just about a content budget, and that allows us to get quite significant traction and engagement.
And I think it's reframing on the age-old discussion about what is PR. It's really about embracing the brand, but not just with press releases.
Well, I mean, that's right. And I think every market is different, but certainly in the ANZ region, because sadly the traditional media outlets here now are very small. We've had a lot of titles close. We have to deliver more sort of integrated earn-led campaigns that, yes, still are media relations, but also touch through into social and digital. So it might be slightly different for each market, but I still think the principle of people that are passionate about your organization, you can definitely find and create interesting content and stories with them.
Yeah. One last question, and I'm afraid then we have to move on to the next topic. Embracing fandom also means for a brand to give up control to some extent. I know a lot of what we saw here was, I'm sure if Heinz Ketchup would have found something that was not Heinz, they would have not displayed it. So it's a little bit of risk, but how much do you need a brand to also really be ready to embrace the risk, and that not everything is on message, on target, on brand, and embracing loss of control?
Yeah, I mean, I think brands and organizations have to, I mean, you know, PR and its very principle is getting a third party to share your message with their audiences. So in a way, yes, you are dialing up that lack of control, but you can still control the asset or the thing that you are creating with those fans. You don't have to release it, you know, as Heinz did, you know, all of those ketchup bottles, I'm sure that they saw them before they went and used them, with the cereal. That was something that we created based on an insight of the fans of that game. So that particular you know, campaign was fully controlled by Xbox, but it's based on an insight around that game.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Sorry for those out there whose questions we were not able to answer explicitly, but I'm sure you can find Richard very easily on all social networks.
Any questions, definitely.
And otherwise, join the Richard Brett fan club and create a fandom campaign just for him. Yeah. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Great insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that leads us to the next presenter and expert today, Lina Marican from Mutant Communications. She's been shaping narratives for over 15 years and currently is the regional managing director. One thing I'm not sure, and I don't know how to prove that. Lina, are we really chatting with you this morning, or is that already a bot?
Very good question, Lars. Why don't you guys tell me at the end?
I'll send you one of those captures, see if you can answer that. Which one is a traffic light? Really looking forward to your topic on ChatGPT versus communicators. And maybe to kick it off, what got you into it? Was just you couldn't ignore it anymore, or clients asked for it, or your intern said, is my job redundant?
No, I had a lot of time actually over the holiday season just to play around, and it's super interesting. To be honest, I'm still learning, so you know, it's a process.
Please take it away.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lars. And of course, you know, we've all heard about ChatGPT. I'm sure you guys are really interested in trying to find out more about how this can help us in our careers, right? So just a quick introduction about this new digital revolution in comms. Obviously, ChatGPT is a super powerful tool. It can really enhance our capability to engage with audiences, deliver effective messaging. It's basically an NLP processing tool that allows us to generate human-like responses in real time. So super valuable asset in the constantly evolving world of communications that we are in. So spoiler alert, that whole introduction was actually taken from an extract of GPT itself, which is really interesting, right? Obviously, there's a lot of ways I would edit it to be in my own tone of voice. And there's so many other tools out there as well, leveraging GPT-3, Writer.com, Jasper AI, just some of those that I've seen before. And I think we've all read the news and seen how, you know, The Guardian themselves have used ChatGPT to write an op-ed that took less time to edit than many human op-eds. Not a great start, I would say, for our comms industry. And recently, Ryan Reynolds himself has used ChatGPT to write an ad for Mint Mobile. So question here is ChatGPT, or will it actually steal our jobs? So I, do have faith to highlight how we can actually leverage this to help our jobs. So I do only have 10 minutes though. So I think, while this is only going to scratch the surface, I do want to summarize how we can start using ChatGPT, how we should be feeding in stronger prompts as well to get the best outcomes. And of course, talking about the potential pitfalls. So how can we make ChatGPT work harder for us as communicators? I would say, broadly bucketing it into 4 key areas. So automation is the one that it would come to mind for most of us, how we can use this to drive efficiencies, writing things quickly, using it as a first cut for inspiration. But there's 3 other areas as well I'd like to explore. So one, in analyzing, we can actually pop in a whole bunch of string of data in ChatGPT to help us analyze it and sieve through trends quickly versus, us reading maybe 100-page report that's given to us. Engage is another key aspect. Of course, as communicators, we can drive deeper conversations with real-time messaging and even language translations as well. And the fourth, but not, exhaustive list, of course, is scale. How can we use ChatGPT to rapidly scale campaigns across different markets by generating very quick responses and making recommendations that we can then tailor? So where do we start, right? There's just a few interesting ways that I've been exploring, on using ChatGPT at Mutant itself. So I kind of bucketed it up into the different roles based on the attendee profile that we have. So obviously, from the PR aspect, outside of helping it to draft the first cut of a press release or a blog, I think influencer research is very interesting. I don't know about you guys, but I have a team that spends a lot of time on research and recommendations, but actually we can use ChatGPT to streamline that process. So why not plug in, a question on, okay, hey, ChatGPT, can you shortlist a list of potential KOLs for my brand to partner with, excluding those who work with competitors? Data storytelling is another one. So I have actually copied and pasted, like a 20-page report into ChatGPT and asked it to summarize, what are the key trends, what are the key insights, that you would see from this particular report, and that will help with storytelling as well. So it really does save time from the PR aspect. For those of you in charge of social media, a couple of interesting ways for those, putting out YouTube videos. Why not use ChatGPT to generate a title, description, tags, and even chapters as well from the transcripts that you have, or even, popping in a visual description of the video. Social listening is also a very interesting one. We have actually copied out, a string of data from CSV files and popped in, a whole bunch of social posts across the region. And ChatGPT did highlight some trends that they saw from the data that we popped in. On the marketing side, we have seen actually quite an interesting use of what we call AI generated campaigns. So why not, sometimes, outside of team brainstorms and all that, it's still hard to get inspired. So, why not use ChatGPT as a launchpad to get inspired for your next creative ad copy or headlines, campaign concepts as well, that's defined with marketing data. So based on your insights that you already have, you can also plug those parameters in. One more interesting use case that I've seen is writing a chatbot script. So, or media FAQs, it does take quite a lot of time to churn out first cut. Why not create an interactive chatbot experience for your customers or media with an interactive FAQs as well? So on the SEO side, and this one might be, really quite more apparent, I think, it's very important to look at how we can potentially use the ChatGPT platform to optimize concepts. So for example, generating high quality optimized content, including meta descriptions as well. So say if you're looking at 20 top keywords that you want your website to be known for, just putting it in there so you can just bring it up to life. In terms of analyzing competition, I think it's very important as well for us to use from an SEO perspective, just popping in some competitor websites to then highlight, what your competitors' search rankings are like and how we can potentially, use our own, tool to improve as well. On the account management, just a couple of tips. You can also use ChatGPT to draft your emails. So why not, use it as a first pass at drafting emails. And you can even look at it from a specific brand voice perspective. And at the end of the day, whoops, hang on, what's going on with my slides? Yes, so media monitoring as well. So outside of using, platforms like Meltwater or Karma, you can also, plug in a whole bunch of data to understand and use ChatGPT really to bring it to life. Sorry, quick one. Can you guys all see my screen? All right, because I do see a gray text box. It's a bit strange.
We'll fix the box later. Sorry for that. But otherwise we can see not only the screen, but also your beautiful face that's still real.
Thanks, Lars. So those are just some thought starters, right? Obviously, there's many ways of using ChatGPT, but I would also say that you get as much as you give into the platform. So using strong prompts, as I've seen, is really important because you really need to define the context, the parameters, our target audience, the brand voice as well, so that ChatGPT platform can put out, information and drafts that actually make a lot more sense for our business. So these are just a few of the parameters that I would recommend. Of course, you can add on, but of course, when ChatGPT throws out something, it's always good to, put the first prompt in to say, hey, I want you to act as a role, or I want you to act as an APAC CEO, or perspective of who you want that response to be coming from. Second step is wanting and highlighting what is the specific type of content that you are looking to get. For example, is it like a blog, or do you want a list, or do you want like a little script FAQ? Just making sure that parameters and all that highlighted for ChatGPT to answer accurately. For target audience, of course, very simple. And the fourth step is, in the context of what is it? Is there a time frame that you're looking at, or is it more forward-looking? Are there specific regions, APAC, or specific markets, Singapore, you want to put that in? Industries. You can actually also copy, paste, and upload scripts, reports for ChatGPT to extract information from, and all that jazz. So lots of information that you can put in. And at the end of the day as well, I think, the parameters of the tone of voice, the length of response, any specific formats is really important as well, because as communicators, of course, we are always looking at, developing briefs and developing scripts for the very specific brands. So I think 3 top tips I would have as well in terms of inputting the right information to get great output is 1, be precise and clear, very short, easy to understand words, no jargon. Avoid yes or no and very general questions, because that's going to really limit the output that you get, as well as, of course, experiment and learn, because we're all learning. This is a super new tool. So without further ado, I just want to just recap as well. There are some pitfalls that we do have. So over on the next slide, you'll see that. Okay. There we go. So there are some pitfalls as well that we have and limitations to the platform. I think, OpenAI's co-founder himself has declared that ChatGPT does create a very misleading impression of greatness, and it really should be used as an aid and not a replacement. So one thing that ChatGPT does not do well is share original perspectives, right? And a lot of us in the PR space, of course, we want to position ourselves, our clients, our spokespeople as thought leaders. So those unique insights, unique perspectives is still something that we would need to create. You would have seen quite a few articles as well talking about how it's quite factually inaccurate in certain aspects. So of course, our job as communicators is always have to fact check everything. We are also, making sure that corporate reputation as PR practitioners is very key. And this tool, unfortunately, allows the competition to develop fake news at scale. So it's something that we need to constantly monitor and counter. And last but not least, what are the ethical implications in terms of disclosure if we are using ChatGPT, for any reason in our communications? I do think that you should always disclose, just so that the folks and clients and the brands and our consumers as well understand how we're actually leveraging it to do better. Because I think if we do use ChatGPT as a permanent crutch, it will actually erode our critical thinking as well, unfortunately. So at the end of the day, ChatGPT versus communicators, who will win the battle? Disruption is here, right? And this is just the third iteration, ChatGPT 3 iteration of this. ChatGPT 4 is soon to come as well. And I have seen some reports on how it's going to be a monster and it's going to blow all our minds even more. So at the end of the day, though, I do think that the ultimate winners will be those who harness the power of ChatGPT to communicate faster, better, and smarter. So there is no escape, guys. So why not start experimenting? It's a learning journey. So I'll be really interested also to see and hear from everyone on how you're using ChatGPT to do our work better.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lina. That was brilliant. Thank you. And sorry for all of those that noticed and realized there was a gray box appearing at some point. So my answer to that would be it's Skynet taking over, or ChatGPT trying to start the takeover. No, in all seriousness, sorry for that. Trying to fix it. And everybody's asking, Lina, your slides are so brilliant. Are you able or willing to share them? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Of course,
we'll
100%.
organize that then with Tara afterwards. Fantastic. For questions that are coming in, I have one right away, and that's have you figured out that there are some topics where it works better and others it's completely off?
Yes, so very good question, Lars. I do find that ChatGPT is still limited in terms of extracting very specific information about specific people as well. I do think perhaps, OpenAI's team did include a bit of a privacy filter as well. So, if you try to search for specific person, okay, I want to learn a little bit more about how Piyush Gupta's tone and style of voice, etc. is all about, so I can write him his next blog. It is a bit limited. So I think it's a lot better, used when you have a little bit more general topics. And the other limitation, which I think, is part of like one of the questions as well that we have on the chat, is its language capabilities. Obviously, right now, ChatGPT is being trained in English. So I haven't actually tried, to input a lot of, different languages. Of course, Mutant, we have offices across Southeast Asia. I don't think ChatGPT is allowed or able to churn out information in different languages yet. Let's wait for ChatGPT 4.
Thanks for directly answering that question, because it was one of the questions we had here already. Is it available for non-English multilingual work? And are there any security concerns using this software, Anita is asking? So if you open it up, does it also read your internals?
Sure. In terms of security concerns, I'm no IT expert, but ChatGPT currently, the platform, the beta platform that we have is on the website. So, I don't think there's any really big security concerns, because it's not something that you would need to download and all that jazz. Like, it's just, sign up for an account and use it as a website-based tool for now.
Yeah. Okay. you're creating your own fan cloud here. So I think Richard would be proud of what we've achieved already since his presentation. You have a lot of great shout outs here from Dean and Mary and others about the presentation. So congrats on that. Nicholas Chan is asking, do you think people will get tired and demand more transparency when interacting with entities that have been generated by AI as opposed to humans? So an ethical problem. And he says the example is, you know, the bad example is spending 20 minutes on a call center and you have to press 1 and then 3 and then 4 and then I just want to speak to a real person, or those early kind of even Singapore Airlines chatbots that just made you more angry.
Trust me, I get really angry with those as well. Thanks, Nick, for the question. So I think, you know, my couple of answers to that one, you know, for ethical reasons, I do feel that brands should definitely disclose when they are using an automated platform or ChatGPT, because at least, you know, from consumers' perspective, at least they understand like, okay, it's not a real human and I'm speaking to, all these are automated responses. So therefore, you know, cut them a bit of slack. And, you know, potentially if the CRM platform allows the consumer to opt for a human speaker as an option, that would be great. I also do feel though that ChatGPT, it has a unique ability to also plug in a very specific brand voice. So you'd be surprised, you know, the FAQs that I plugged in, or even, you know, I mentioned Ryan Reynolds in his ad. He actually asked GPT, okay, say this in my voice and tell a joke, tell a curse word so it sounds like me, sounds typically like Ryan, right? And ChatGPT actually wrote a script that sounds almost like him. So, you know, I think we have to also, I guess, broaden our mindset, because I think ChatGPT's new system, it actually allows us to do a lot more to nail the right tone of voice that we want for our brands that we work with.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. We have the questions about how relevant will it be in the Asian countries. I think that goes down, especially the language part, because otherwise it's kind of can be as relevant as others. Another question is, how might communication agencies integrate AI into their BAUs and up the value proposition and relevance of agencies in this day and age? Or to flip it the other way around, will AI and make us more redundant or more valuable, in your opinion?
I mean, I run a PR agency myself, so I would like to think not. We have actually had clients ask us point blank to our head of content, like, oh, you know, aren't you afraid for your content marketing team? Because now we can use ChatGPT, right? But one thing I mentioned earlier that we still bring to the table as humans, right? The value that we bring, it's our original perspective, the thought leadership aspect. So ChatGPT basically analyzes everything that's publicly out there online on the internet, but you know, we still need to provide one original perspectives to that localized flavor as well, because ultimately we understand the target audience. I would say that, you know, agencies though should be exploring how, you know, we should be using ChatGPT to be a lot more efficient. So for example, you know, we can save a lot more time if we have a first cut of an analysis or a report or even research for the top 10 influencers that you want to target in a specific market, and then, you know, have a human eye to that, human lens to that.
Okay, cool. You know, it's interesting if you look into some of those AIs, it's not just it's the processing, like companies like GitHub Copilot, disclaimer our client, but they help to bridge the human to coding kind of interface with AI, so that makes it easier to kind of co-pilot coding, right? So it makes it, and I think those are great examples when we look into how these AIs can go beyond just one simple task, but basically bridge barriers or platforms or languages or syntaxes. I think that's the real kind of, I think, the potential that we have in there.
Exactly. If we have any creatives on the call as well, there's another platform that you might be worried about, DALL-E. So they, you know, it's a platform that allows you to create automated visual images. So there we go.
One last question that goes back to ethics, and then I'm afraid we have to move on, is do you see a need for establishing rules on disclosure, especially when it goes up to public? Is that written by a journalist, reporter, or are you aware of any rules that already exist or public or agreed on?
That's a great question. I'm not aware of any rules yet in our part of the world, but I 100% agree though. And I do think, at some point in the near future, it would be good to have some rules of disclosure so that the public, understand the content that they're consuming. It's written by a ChatGPT or bot versus a human being. I just think it's ethically and morally the right thing to do.
Thank you very much. And, I'm sure some SEO and SEM companies, they're already extremely excited as long as they can feed in the right terms, because a lot of times it's a volume game versus a quality game on that side, at least in the past. So thanks so much for those insights. And that directly leads us to our next presenter. Thanks, Lina, again. To Amanda Lee, the director at Asia Prospect. And I'm sure everybody in the industry knows Prospect resourcing around for over 20 years now, award-winning global recruitment business for PR comms. So I'm sure one or the other on this call have sent their CVs to Amanda or her team or got a call. Hey, are you interested? But I think it's exactly the discussion about just now we talked about, will AI and technology make talent redundant? And now we're moving into the discussion, the war for talent. And Amanda, maybe last year we saw that massive kind of disbalance of talent and demand as all PR and comms was coming back out of the shadows of COVID. Now we have like Edelman putting hiring freeze out there globally. Are we back in balance, or where are we in that before you dive back into your topic?
Well, Lars, we are actually going to go into all of that in my presentation. So,
yeah, good.
So bear with me.
Looking forward to it.
Perfect. So good morning. Thank you to the PRCA for inviting us to speak today, and for all of you for joining us. I'm Amanda Lee, the Asia Director at Prospect. Thank you, Lars, for the kind introduction. A few words about Prospect. We're in the business of building and growing careers for PR and comms professionals in Asia and the UK. And yes, we've been around for over 20 years. We do this through recruitment, mentoring, and coaching. We also produce the State of the Industry Review every year, providing insights into industry trends in the UK and Asia comms markets. We will be releasing our next review in February, so I hope you will all watch out for it. And that's a report that's months in the making, so we're very excited to launch it when it's ready. Today, I'll be speaking on the changing dynamics in the war for talent. Some people have called it the war with talent, given how aggressive the hiring market was and has been, although we see that is changing, and I will be speaking more about this in my slides. So the last few COVID years have been tumultuous, to say the least. Great resignation, great reset, quiet quitting, hybrid and remote debates, burnout epidemic. What's next? Businesses have had to change the way they operate. The purpose of the workplace has been questioned, and people have reevaluated their expectations around how work fits into their lives and vice versa. In the course of my work, I get a lot of questions about the job market from clients and candidates throughout Asia Pacific. And it's understandable. We have entered one of the most confusing job markets in decades. While the unemployment rate continues to drop, companies are also worried about the slowdown. So they are hiring and laying off often at the same time. With both layoffs and efforts to hire going on simultaneously, many of you may be wondering, what's going on here? Well, a lot is indeed going on. On one hand, for the last year and a half, workers have been in high demand. During the Great Resignation in 2021, we saw many people were quick to quit their jobs. In fact, a recent survey that Prospect conducted in 2022 among PR and comms professionals in Asia showed that almost half, 45% of respondents, have been in their current employment for under 2 years. It was a hot job market. The mindset then was that they could easily find another job, and talent was in such short supply that they could negotiate great offers, and they often did. As markets reopened, companies were desperate to retain and increase their workforce, and so they agreed to higher salaries and more benefits. It was not uncommon to hear of record salary increments during that time as companies jostled for employees who could make an impact to the business. So businesses offered remote and hybrid work choices. Some provided flexibility, allowing people to decide where and when they like to work. Companies offered resources and benefits to help with staff's mental health, emotional well-being, and to help them avoid burnout. As a global agency leader shared with us, candidates wanted more work-life balance and well-being benefits. Before, it was just all about the salary and the financial aspects of the package. An in-house comms leader also mentioned to us during our survey that they had to offer significant pay rises to retain staff, they had to increase salaries, and they had to offer new opportunities and benefits to remain competitive. However, seemingly overnight, the mood has dramatically changed. We are now dealing with inflation, along with other geopolitical and macro events. We all know of people who have been affected by rescinded offers, hiring freezes, cut budgets, and layoffs. Industry sectors such as technology and financial services that were aggressively hiring during and just after the COVID era have already seen rounds of layoffs. So as we look ahead in 2023, our team at Prospect have made some observations and predictions on what will change and what we will continue to see this year. So what will change in 2023? I think this will come as no surprise to anyone. We will not see the salary peaks, the aggressive salary increments, and the mass hiring of before. I think, I don't think anyone will have any questions around this. And what will continue in 2023? So there's some good news. Companies will still be hiring. Many industries are transforming their business models that existed in pre-pandemic times. And this shift is creating demand for jobs, people, and new approaches. So for example, car companies are becoming electric manufacturers, while chemical and oil companies are moving into sustainable energy generation and storage. So these new businesses and their employers will need new thinking and new skill sets from their comms teams. Secondly, we are seeing a rebalancing of employee and employer interests. It will not be an employee market nor an employer market. As working models continue to evolve, companies will have to make tough decisions to balance between productivity and people. Thirdly, we see that hybrid work models are here to stay. However, many managers have found it challenging to manage and oversee a distributed workforce across geographies or working between home and the office. For many managers, it's just easier to have everyone under one roof. However, according to Prospect's research again, employees in Asia rank flexibility as the third most important determinant of happiness in their current employment. Interestingly, flexibility came out as being almost as important as pay for employee happiness. A regional comms lead shared with us that after introducing a flexible working policy based on individual conversations, consultations, and moving to measure people on output, that really inspired her team, and she saw positive effects in both morale and tenure. Ultimately, the best practice will depend on an organization's unique needs, roles, and people, and should be based on data, employee sentiment, and individual case by case. There's really no one size fits all, and any policies will need to be supported by organizational culture. For example, even if a company launches an unlimited leave policy, which appears empowering, but if one's leader has archaic views around leave and vacation time, employees may even take less vacation time than before, even if they have this unlimited leave policy. Coming back to this slide, fifth, there will be a greater emphasis on culture fit for both employers and employees. Many people have used this period to reevaluate their lives and the role of work, where they want to work, and who they want to work with. So there'll be more thought around the roles people choose to take up. So employers will have to be prepared to show and tell their culture to prospective employees. Finally, we think there will be a sustained demand for employee engagement and internal comms roles to support a company's focus on people. So that's all I have to share today. I welcome your questions. My contact details and email address on the next slide. Please feel free to grab me after this event or contact me directly if you'd like to discuss this. Always happy to have a conversation about how Prospect can help grow your team or your career. And in the spirit of Chinese New Year, I wish you all an abundant and fulfilling year ahead with the right balance of work, purpose, and of course, we cannot forget fun. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And then also from me, happy Gong Xi Fa Cai in advance, Amanda. So please, our audience, keep the questions going. And sorry if I took some of your topics already up in the introduction, but I think it's like really on everybody's mind. So do you even think it's possible? So do you think, sorry, I'm just very practical and right on. How much of a salary hike should hiring managers think about this year? If you can do that on top of your minds, same job, just it's basically inflation adjustment. Is that a big thing? So are people asking, hey, if everything was the same, at least it has to be 7%, 10% just to get the cost of living sorted?
Well, in the context of PR agencies, I would then ask, are clients paying 7-8% more?
Oh, please, can I quote you on that? Can you please speak to our focus? No, but it's a very good point, right? Because then you have the margins getting squeezed, and I believe a lot of agencies coming out of last year with payroll budgets higher than they wanted them, and then you have to make up for that. But thank you very much, and sorry to putting you directly on point there. Some questions from the audience. What three things can a company do to keep an employee, right? It's not in Prospect's immediate interest to have companies keep their employees longer, but that means happier. And then, but no, sorry, all fun aside, what can companies do to keep an employee? We understand if someone wants to leave, they will, but are there any key procedures we can put in place to avoid this?
Yes, I think they can do quite a few things that's within their control, and maybe a correction last. We genuinely do want people to stay in their jobs.
I know.
We think a lot of jumpiness is not good for the industry. It's also not good for individual growth and learning. So, when we place candidates, we do want them to stay. And even if we don't place candidates, we want people to have good and fulfilling jobs and, feel that they are making an impact. I think this is like what we do as recruiters, right? When we speak to candidates, we really try and uncover, besides, we all need to put food on the table, right? But why do you work? What kind of job would you find interesting? What kind of work do you ideally want to be doing? And in the context of a comms role, right? There's so many things within comms. You can do investor relations, you can do internal comms, you can do content, you can be an issues and crisis specialist. So even within the comms function, there's a variety of work that one can do. So the work aside, I think we also go into motivations, right? Like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? What are the job roles that you can take that can help you bridge to the roles you want in 5-10 years? What kind of people you want to work with? What kind of culture do you feel like you can flourish in? So I mean, long answer, but we really do try and drill down to an individual's motivations, and that's when we try and make a match to, where, the kind of companies and where they can be, happy in. And I think then, to answer your question, what can employers do is to maybe also be quite clear what they offer to employees, whether, it's the benefits, whether it's the learning opportunity, whether it's a culture, and how do you describe culture. So it's, it's a lot of questions, but it's certainly worth thinking about.
Thank you. Then practical question to follow up. Do counter offers still work? Do they make sense in the first place? Personally,
I don't think so.
It just delays the ultimate decision, yeah?
Yeah, and for many people, it's sort of almost too little, too late. So in most cases, I would say it doesn't work. You're sort of putting a band-aid at best.
Okay, thank you very much. Good. Next question. We have a couple of here. We are seeing big demands salary-wise, but not commensurate skill levels. Can you say something about candidate quality in the current market?
This is a great question. When you talk about quality, I think you also need to be specific what kind of skill sets you're looking for, and how does that benchmark to what is available out there in the market.
Yeah. One thing that we discovered, and maybe would want your point of view on that as well, is you have a whole bunch of junior PR professionals that entered the industry when the pandemic hit. So they learned only a lot of times a subset of what PR or communications or marketing can do, because it was all limited to what you could do during the pandemic. Do you think that we are facing actually a fundamental crisis of talent and quality because we have a whole generation that was not exposed to all the industry can do and needs?
That's a great point, Lars, and that's feedback that we've been hearing as we've been catching up with our clients, both on the agency and in-house side. But I think maybe it's more pronounced on agency because, as you know, the pace in which an agency has to function, the kind of collaboration and sort of pressure cooker environment, right, in which teams often work in. There's a lot of social skills that one needs to have, to function well in an agency. And if someone has been working primarily remotely, that's not something that they might have been able to be exposed to. So coming back, there's a bit of a gap, right? So that's definitely been an observation. And I think for the young people, it's a gap that they do need to focus on and, come back to the office, make an effort, to ask seniors out, get more face time, because all of that is very, very valuable as they continue to build their career.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's do two questions. Nicholas Chan has a lot of good and long questions. Thanks, Nick. As a hiring manager and trainer, I feel that training comes up as one of the most talked about benefit and requirement for the hiring conversation in the recent 2 years. But experience is that when training is offered, people are too busy or not interested. So what are we doing wrong with training? Is there, I think I want, but really it's like, where does that mismatch come from? And we see that sometimes I want more training, but then, oh no, I'm too busy, I can't, and you have to basically push them to attend. Is there a specific type of training employees, or do we get it fundamentally wrong because we still use the one-size-fits-all kind of bucket approach?
My answer to Nick is ask your people. Why are they, saying they're interested, but why are they not attending? Is it because they don't have time? Ask them, right? And I think from their answers, you can tweak accordingly.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last question, post-COVID, most especially, what has changed in terms of top management perspective or views on the communications roles in their organizations? Are those in the communications roles functions valued more these days, or do communications professionals have a seat at the management or executive committees now more or less? So it's really an in-house question. Also love that because it's also ongoing debate for decades. So has COVID changed that?
So I'm not sure I understand the question.
Basically, has COVID changed the value in-house communicators provide or that top management sees in communicators? So is their role, their perception elevated? So do more or less communicators in in-house roles really are seen as you should be at the board table?
Thanks, Lars. I think COVID has definitely given the comms function a lot of opportunities to take the lead, to be a strategic, to give more strategic counsel. I think comms has often had the position of being the conscience of a company, right? And helping a company communicate, looking at its values and bringing that human element when communicating with stakeholders. So I think this period, during COVID, a lot of communicators have taken up the challenge and really emphasize the value of comms, during all the sensitivities, the ups and downs that we've seen in the past few years. So I would say yes. This era has definitely allowed comms people to shine.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Nick, I'm giving you a bonus point now, but you can't have 3 questions for the next round, okay? PR is notoriously known for OT, overtime. Have you seen this trend change over the years? How does this reconcile with people expecting more work-life balance?
Big questions, Nick. Coming back to the quote in my slide, where, as part of our prospect research, we interviewed an in-house comms lead, and she was saying that after speaking to her team and making some tweaks in terms of policies and changing how people are measured by their output of work rather than, the number of hours they actually go into the office or they're online, she saw an improvement in morale and tenure. So I think, if it's possible in your work environment to focus on outputs and deliverables, and, maybe that is a challenge for the industry.
An ongoing one, right? And it doesn't get better in senior management anyway, where OT will never be paid. But yeah. But maybe as a follow-up, and then we really have to wrap it up. Do you believe that people are more understanding in flexible environments to that work is not a 9 to 5? So I might be involved in work at 10, 11 hours a day, but I have the flexibility because I can work from home, I can pick up the kids, I run an errand, do the laundry, whatever it is in there. So is that flexibility model actually, does it give us a little bit more of flexibility also on the working kind of spectrum? Or is it the typical thing like unlimited leave, and at the end of the day, people actually take less leave? So work from home, but at the end of the day, you actually work more.
Wow. I think it depends also where people are in their lives, different stages of lives. If you're younger, you tend to prefer something else. If you're older with kids, you have a family, I think you might prefer the former. So no one size fits all, Lars.
Thank you. And I think that's one thing that I take away from trainings to hiring to what people are looking for. It's that big increase of importance of flexibility says it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Really appreciate it. That brings us to our last speaker presenter of today. We have Jennie Johnson with us here. She's the head of marketing for GrabAds. and over close to 15 years of experience, communication, marketing, advertising. And we really want to find out about super apps' importance in that marketing mix. And why do we need super apps advertising? Let's put it on the spot. Jennie, really looking forward to hear and listen and learn from you.
I'm so much looking forward to addressing everybody today. And I'm really happy to be speaking to this audience in particular because while I'm a B2B marketer today, I got my start as a PR person, and it informs, everything that I do in my job. So I'm talking about today the rise of super app advertising in Southeast Asia and why it matters to marketers and communications professionals as well. Obviously, in my position as GrabAds marketing head, I think this is a major trend for 2023, but I think that for some very good reasons, and it has to do with many of the very special qualities of this emerging channel. So super apps are an emerging digital platform. And whenever we talk about digital platforms, the first thing marketers think is data, right? What data signals are created as people, users interact with the platform. And each of the digital platforms will have its own particular set of signals, right? What do people search for? What do they watch on video sites? And what content and creators do people interact with in their social media feed? And in the case of super apps, which are used every day by millions of people, to eat, to order groceries, to make payments, to ride and deliver, and many, many more things, depending on the app in question, you're creating a lot of very direct and interesting signals for marketers. And what we like to say is that the super app you it's the real you. It's not the image that you put out in the world. It's what you actually put your money behind. And, it's an old adage that you are what you eat, but that is very relevant here in the context of super apps for marketers as well. Are you health conscious? Are you a fast food lover? Guilty pleasures? Are you a pizza enthusiast? Are you a carnivore? And also you are where you go. Are you a student who goes to school? Are you a mom who drops your kid off at school? A professional working in the CBD? An entrepreneur, a small business owner? And then also, you are what you buy. And I don't mean this in a materialistic way, but, are you cost conscious? Do you love luxury? Are you somebody who's going to pay for convenience? And these signals are very, very rich and interesting for marketers. And they, are quite unique when you look at the total digital channels out there. So as super apps have grown to become part of the lives of consumers, and I know I use super apps on a daily basis, obviously, not just for work, but also, as a user. We see that it's not just about connecting people to services and, they come to the app, they make a transaction, they leave. Super apps are actually increasingly driving brand discovery. They're driving consideration and obviously shaping intent and facilitating purchase, which does some really interesting things for, attribution and other things that marketers care quite a lot about. And indeed, as we've seen post-COVID, super apps are emerging as a key media channel. So when you speak to marketers across Southeast Asia, 80% of them expect super app advertising to be the next big thing. At the same time, 61% of them haven't started and they haven't spent, but they do plan to start. While 51% say super app advertising should be an entirely new media category on its own, within that digital set. So obviously there's a great deal of excitement among marketers for this channel. And if you look at why people are excited or, why they should be, I would argue that it's actually because platforms like super apps are increasingly not just about delivery, they're about discovery. And as they facilitate discovery, the user journey actually has migrated into the super app. So not just that, all essential purchase or that transaction, but discovery and consideration and all the way down through to loyalty as well. And when we look at the data, why we say this so confidently is because, within Grab's context, as one super app, within GrabFood, 62% of GrabFood users say they actually turn to Grab to discover new restaurants. So this isn't a case that people are just saying, oh, I want to order one particular merchant and I know I can get it on Grab. So I'm going to go straight there, go to the merchant and then navigate through to purchase. They're actually saying, Grab, what's for dinner? And when they do ask this question, the average GrabFood user across the region actually spends 17 minutes browsing and considering the different options before they even place their order. Finally, 74% of consumers generally say they browse delivery apps, super apps, not just Grab, but other delivery apps as well, without a particular restaurant or store in mind at all. So if you're thinking about, being a marketer and the volume of transactions that's going through super apps, it's about putting yourself out there and driving visibility where people are not just buying, but also discovering and considering as well. So what does this look like actually in the case of a brand? And this is actually one of my favorite examples from the last couple of years. So during the pandemic, obviously many of us, I know myself, forced to cook at home as restaurants close. And this, leads to some decision fatigue, working at home, as we just heard, from Amanda, lots of changes in how we do our work, and you're tired. You've got to answer that adult question of what's for dinner every night, every week, without being able to go out. And so people come to our app and they ask, what's for dinner? Knorr actually ran ads that weren't just promoting Knorr products as individuals, but they were actually promoting recipes to help answer that question. So people click into the recipe and then they see a recipe that happens to contain Knorr products, not exclusively focused on it. And then with a click of a button, they can actually put all of those products into their GrabMart cart, check out, make dinner, it arrives, the ingredients arrive on your doorstep, on demand. So this is just an example of some of the brands who are taking into account the entire user journey, not just that transaction, but driving discovery as well. So as a new media channel, when I speak to marketers or I speak to professionals in the industry, I encounter quite a lot of myths. Even for a new channel, you might think, is there time to develop super app myths? There are, and people have them. And one of the one that is my favorite is actually people will say, super apps are just too transactional for marketers. They're just too transactional. And I think this one is very interesting. I've heard it quite a lot. But it's interesting because I think it shows how much our perception of what's required for digital advertising has been shaped by the platforms that have been dominant over the last 10 years. So the fact of the matter is on other types of platforms, which are focused less on facilitating transaction, but are actually focused on creating content creation or videos or short form videos or social media, user-generated content. As a brand, you actually have to mimic that platform behavior in order to appear natural and to appear authentic. Whereas in super apps, we like to say brands feel at home because literally people and users are coming to discover, to eat, to ride, to shop, and to pay. They expect to transact. They expect to discover brands and services. That's why they're there. So we actually think super apps being transactional it's not a bug, it's a feature, as we say in the industry. And, so then we get to the second one, which is, okay, so you've got transactions. Super apps can transact, but I can't launch a brand there. I can't launch a menu item, for example, if you're a food vendor, or I can't promote my product. I can't build brand on super apps. And for this, I would turn to, one of the largest brands in the world, McDonald's. So they say super apps are like being located in the largest digital food court. And what they say, it's not because simply people come and purchase, is because when you enter a food court, you look around and you say, what should I offer? And you look at the images around you and you look at what other people are eating. So in the case of McDonald's, they have said publicly, and this is part of our food and deliveries trend report from this 2022, 30% of the business of McDonald's in Southeast Asia now comes through delivery platforms, including Grab, but not limited to Grab, versus just 10% pre-COVID-19. So if you're looking to launch a menu item, to build your brand, and to launch a product, actually, that is an enormous and very interesting volume that you want to be playing in. So it's not just about reaching everybody. It's about reaching people as they walk into that digital food court and ask a question, or as they open their app and say, where am I going to go? What am I going to buy today? That's something that we really emphasize. And it's not just about, putting a banner up in the kind of classic digital advertising sense of the word. Super apps are interesting because they can actually get physical products in people's hands on demand. So, we have an advertiser that we work with, Alaska. They were actually launching a product, which is a very particular product, creamy beef and creamy chicken evap. It's a cooking ingredient. Home cooks can use it to enhance their soups and their stewed dishes. And obviously, it's the kind of thing that if you look at the name, you think, I have to try this to love it. And actually, they worked with our platform to launch this product through a sampling exercise. So the ads that they created actually put users through to merchants where they could add a free sample of this product into their basket. And they use advertising on Superapps to actually distribute their product. And this is because Superapps don't just give you that digital ad format, that banner or what have you. They also connect you to an entire logistics and delivery infrastructure that gets products in hands on demand. And finally, this is one of my really favorite ones. I just alluded to the sort of wide range of experiences that brands can create when you have a platform that doesn't just give you the ad space, but also gives you access to other functionality like a rewards and loyalty program, that delivery infrastructure, a network of merchant retailers and delivery drivers as well. Brands are doing some really amazing things. So when people say, well, okay, I get it, you can track purchases, you can attribute purchases, but actually you can do some very interesting things around brand innovation, brand building as well. So I'm going to go to one case from one of our advertisers, which is Selecta Ice Cream in the Philippines, and play this video. The sound isn't coming up for me. Is it coming up for others?
No, but I can try to lip sync.
Okay, I will simply, I'll go to the next slide and I'll tell you a little bit about what they did. So Selecta Ice Cream realized in 2020 that what people love in the Philippines and what gives them happiness is connecting with others. So then the question becomes, in an era of lockdowns, how do you actually create moments of happiness? How do you facilitate moments of happiness as a brand when people can't go out and see the ones that they love? And what they did is they actually partnered with Grab to help people send ice cream and share ice cream virtually with their friends and family. So they could log onto the platform. They saw ads saying deliver happiness, click on the ads and then choose ice cream to send to their loved ones, their friends, their family. That was then picked up from our network of merchant partners and then delivered by our delivery driver. And this was an incredibly effective way for Selecta Ice Cream to build brand love, to, in a say trend jack, if I can say that, in a moment of lockdown, help people transcend the physical distance that we were all suffering under and share ice cream and happiness, therefore, with friends and family. So this is an example of a brand that did, a really innovative and frankly award-winning in the Philippines campaign, all about driving brand love, thanks to everything that Superapps can create. So yes, Superapps are digital media. You can attribute, you have a closed loop. You can tell when an ad drove a sale if you have a merchant storefront. But brands can also build something a little bit more, to use that to connect directly to their customer and build brand engagement and loyalty and frankly love. So that's my presentation for the day. Happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Jennie. That was really insightful. Thank you. And just out of curiosity, is that the corporate is grabtaxi.com? Is that the corporate domain?
Well, we actually, I could also put grab.com. I think those who are familiar with Grab might know that we started out as a mobility player. And as we expanded to a super app, then we actually became grab.com. So both email addresses would work. But if you go to the website, I think probably grab.com is the better way to navigate directly.
Okay, we have a few questions here. And thanks for everybody who is bearing with us that we are running a little bit over time, but I think it's so insightful what we have today to offer. And I don't want to cut out all the questions. Two quick questions from my end. One is, if we talk Superapp advertising, I have to ask that. What are the top 3-4 platforms in the region that people should consider in a mix with Grab?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but I think what you're asking is basically what media mix should I develop as a marketer looking across the entire digital spectrum?
Yeah.
And definitely whenever you're marketing for an emerging channel, what you're trying to do is describe and differentiate the channel and what role that it plays. And so what I would encourage marketers to do is evaluate the strengths of each digital channel and make sure that the media plan that you develop has targeting the user at each point in the user journey. So definitely no one would ever say that you should only use one digital channel. It should only be Grab. You want to look at what you're trying to accomplish, what your specific goal is. Are you trying to drive sales? In which case you want to look at more of the direct performance platforms. Are you trying to build brand? In which case you want to look at a slightly different media mix, looking where people are spending their time, as well as where your consumers tend to hang out. And that's probably common to all of the answers is where are your audience, follow the eyeballs, and make sure that you're using each platform for what it's good at.
Thank you. And then I'll directly link that to a question from the audience. What are some top reasons I should put money with super ads instead of other platforms we're already familiar with? And I'll add a spin to that. Where do you see budgets coming from? Because budgets are not rising, they're just always getting distributed differently.
Well, I don't know about budgets not rising. I mean, I won't say right now exactly, and I obviously can't speak directly for Grab, but generally across the industry, digital budgets tend to grow. And they tend to grow because audiences tend to move online over time, away from offline channels. So digital marketing is, as a industry, quite robust and is typically growing. In terms of what, for example, super apps offer versus some of the other digital platforms, I would say there's a few things that stand out. The first is, as I said, they are transactional, which means people are coming to these platforms in order to spend money. They're not coming to be entertained. Now, that can be a good thing, or it can be something that you maybe aren't looking for. But in general, when people are coming to spend money, they're literally coming to look for your brand or your service. And you're reaching them in moments when they're actually looking to make a purchase. So that's something that isn't true of social media platforms. And again, not to say that they don't have a role in the media plan, they do, but it's really about considering where your user is. A second benefit that's related to that is typically super apps offer a lot more in terms of closed loop attribution, because if you are selling on the platform, and not every advertiser is, and I'll get to that in a minute, but if you're selling on the platform, you are able to directly attribute your sale to the ad, right? So for example, the fast food restaurant knows that the person who saw their ad went and bought a burger, and that's quite unique. And it's not just about fast food. We also, of course, have a network of merchant GrabMart retailers, for example, third parties, as well as in some markets, our own grocery as well. So that's quite a unique opportunity for FMCGs or people who promote or who sell products that people use every day. Now, there are also, when I say non-merchant partners, so these are folks who don't sell on super app platforms. It could be a credit card provider and so forth. And the reason what they come to super apps for is two things. First of all, very rich first-party data signals that are, as people interact with super apps, which often involves, what they search for, they pay for. And second, they do come to plug into that broader super app ecosystem. So for example, I've seen on our platform ads for credit cards that promise Grab rewards points for signups. So they're able to plug into that pre-existing loyalty functionality within the super app and then use that to incentivize people to interact with their ads.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next question, and I like how pointed it is. Like, why should comms, so I assume PR people, care about super apps? So if we take paid experts out, is it relevant for us? How can we interact with a super app?
Well, I think it is relevant because it speaks to changing and evolving user behavior. And the reason I think it's relevant is because also so much of the time as comms professionals here in Asia, I won't name names, but companies I have worked for want me to take North American materials, and then they say, okay, please promote this in Asia. But what I always say is that, and then, if you don't want to do what they want you to do, they say, oh, okay, Asia's behind. I get it. We can't do that there. But Asia, Southeast Asia isn't behind. It's different. And super apps are typical of how behavior, in Asia looks very, very different to how it looks in the United States. And this is relevant for your clients. And it's relevant for everybody here who has to reach consumers, explain their behavior. Super apps are kind of a very Asian phenomenon. You don't see them coming out of the United States, at least not yet. Maybe they'll adopt one and we'll be the leaders here. So I would say that it's a classic example of Asia isn't behind, it's different. And we all need to be aware of that as comms professionals.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Can super apps be used for B2B marketing?
They can. Obviously, whenever you're looking to use a platform, you have to ask, who are you trying to reach? So definitely there, as a B2B marketer, there are use cases I would not turn to Superapps for, very candidly. I would look for other platforms, LinkedIn and so forth. But, it depends on what you're trying to sell. If you're trying to sell loans to small businesses, and you know that there's lots of merchant small businesses on Superapps, hawker centers or small corner store bodegas or grocery stores and shops and stalls, barungs, that can be a really good platform for you. So as always with marketing, it depends on your audience. Know your audience and follow them.
Okay, thank you. The last question of today from the audience comes from nobody else but Mr. Question Master himself, Nicholas Chan today. How do we measure ROI on Superapp marketing? Must we be a merchant to benefit? What if I'm not a food? Nick, you're not a food. Somebody need to tell you. It feels very food-centric.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely when you look at the advertising base on the Superapp, it will naturally track to the native merchants on the platform, which, to be clear, don't include just food, although those are some of the biggest brands that we tend to talk about, but also include FMCG companies, for example. And you don't need to be a merchant to benefit. Like I said, non-endemic, sorry to throw that term out there, but non-merchant brands include lots of folks who want to reach the types of audience that Superapps have to offer. So specifically travel companies, especially these days as travel reopens, we look to welcome Chinese travelers back to Southeast Asia. We also, financial services and those offering things like credit cards and loans and wealth management services, because obviously high value transactional users are a key audience for these types of folks. And these are just a few examples of other brands who with their platform. In terms of measuring attribution for the non-merchant, of course, you're going to have to ask what your goal is and track carefully whether your ad performed or not. Did it deliver you the right type of person? Did it drive the signups? But we definitely, there's applications for the non-merchant, non-food brands as well.
Okay, thank you. One question out of what I've seen in other parts of the world. Advertising is straightforward. Will Grab also offer kind of more branded advertorial content options? Because I know Grab has been hiring editorial staff quite a bit and extensively.
Oh, that I'm not really sure if I would be the best person to answer that. I know as a marketer myself, I'm always trying to hire editors to write some content. Perhaps I should look at ChatGPT. Lina's presentation, both inspiring and slightly terrifying as well.
Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot, but
no problem
has to ask the tough questions. Thank you so much, Jennie. I learned a lot, really excited. And I just came, what I love also is like, I just came from Singapore to Philippines yesterday, and I just switch it and use the same app, same interface, gets me where I want and what I want. So really Southeast Asia, yeah, I couldn't travel without what your company does.
Thank you. Great to hear it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And that concludes our session for today, 2023, the year of many changes and many things coming back to where it was, and things that we can't even think of so far. I know there are a lot of economic kind of uncertainties out there. We know China is reopening, so that will change tourism for sure, and might change a lot of other things. Thanks so much for the great questions, the insights. Reminder again, the deadline for the PRCA Awards is this coming Friday, so don't miss out. And please also to connect to PRCA APAC on LinkedIn to just stay ahead on what's happening. There are tons of fantastic training sessions, sit-downs across the region. So if there's something that's missing, please reach out to PRCA and let them know. They're always open and helpful and want to do things that are relevant for you out there. That's the reason why they exist. Thanks so much for bearing with me and my lame German jokes. I try to not change this year on that one. And see you around somewhere in this region soon. Thanks. Have a wonderful day and happy Chinese New Year for everybody.